Every morning, before the city truly woke up, I was already on my feet. The alarm rang at 4:30 a.m., but most days I didn't need it. Years of responsibility had trained my body to wake before the sound. I quietly slipped out of bed, careful not to wake my children. They were the reason I never complained. They were the reason I never quit. I washed my face with cold water, stared at my reflection for a moment, and sighed. The man in the mirror looked older than his age. Lines of exhaustion carved deep paths across my forehead. My hands were rough, cracked from years of hard work. No one looking at me would ever guess what lived inside my mind. I put on my faded uniform, the same blue cleaning jacket I'd worn for years, and stepped outside into the quiet darkness. By the time the sun rose, I was already cleaning offices where people like me were invisible. I scrubbed floors where executives walked in polished shoes. I wiped glass walls that reflected lives I was never meant to live. Sometimes I caught my reflection in those shiny surfaces. A cleaner holding a mop, and I wondered how my life had ended up this way. But I didn't hate my job. I hated how people looked through me. At work, no one knew my name. I was just the cleaner. People spoke around me, not to me. Some didn't even lower their voices, assuming I couldn't understand them. They were wrong, very wrong. But I stayed silent. Silence had become my shield. Every evening, after long shifts, I rushed home to cook dinner, help with homework, and tuck my kids into bed. They thought I was the strongest man in the world. And to them I was. Their mother used to say I was special. She used to smile when I spoke, like she was hearing music. I met her years ago, back when my life looked very different. Back when I still had dreams. Back when my world hadn't collapsed overnight. We were young, hopeful, and poor but happy. She believed in me more than I believed in myself. When things got hard, she reminded me that life wasn't a straight road. Twisted, tested you. Then came the night that changed everything. The accident. One phone call. One hospital hallway. One sentence that shattered my world forever. After that, I became more than a man. I became a mother and a father in one body. There was no time to grieve properly. Bills didn't stop. Hunger didn't wait. Children didn't understand death. So I took the first job I could find. Cleaning. People think cleaning is simple, that it requires nothing but muscle and time. They don't realize how much thinking happens when your body is on autopilot. While my hands worked, my mind traveled. I listened. Every office had its own rhythm, its own language. English meetings, French phone calls, Spanish laughter, Arabic negotiations, German arguments, Mandarin whispers, Russian debates, Japanese formalities. Most people thought I was just noise in the background. But I was listening, learning, absorbing. Language was never just words to me. It was survival, connection, power. At night, after my kids fell asleep, I studied using old books, borrowed materials, and whatever free content I could find. Some nights I slept only 2 hours. Some nights not at all. I didn't do it to impress anyone. I did it because learning made me feel alive. Years passed. My children grew. And my life stayed the same. Until one ordinary day, something extraordinary happened. I was cleaning the executive floor when I overheard a tense conversation. Another one failed, a woman said sharply. That's the 12th interpreter, a man replied. We're running out of time. 12 interpreters? My hands froze mid-wipe. I listened more closely. They were talking about an important international deal. A deal involving multiple countries, multiple languages, and apparently no one good enough to handle it. I felt something stir inside me, a dangerous feeling. Hope. I shook my head and forced myself to keep cleaning. People like me didn't step into boardrooms. People like me didn't raise their hands and speak up. But that night, as I tucked my kids into bed, my daughter looked up at me and asked, Dad, why do you always look tired? I smiled and brushed her hair back. Because I'm working hard for you. She held my hand tightly. You're smart, Daddy. You could do anything. Her words stayed with me long after the lights were off. The next morning, as I stood outside the executive office with my cleaning cart, My heart pounded harder than it ever had before. 12 interpreters had failed. I was about to do something no one would expect. Something that could change everything. Or ruin it. I took a deep breath and knocked. The knock echoed louder than I expected. For a moment, no one answered. I almost turned away, convinced I had made a mistake. Then the door opened, and a woman in a sharp suit looked down at me, her eyes flicking immediately to my uniform. "Yes?" she asked, already impatient. I heard you're looking for an interpreter," I said quietly. Her eyebrows lifted, not in surprise, but in disbelief. She glanced behind her, then back at me, clearly deciding whether this was worth her time. "We're in the middle of something," she said. "You should get back to work." "I understand," I replied. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she could hear it. "But I speak multiple languages. I just want a chance." She sighed, the way people do when they think they're being generous by not laughing. "How many?" "8. That did it." She laughed softly, shook her head, and smiled in a way that wasn't kind. "Sir, 12 trained interpreters have already failed. Please don't waste our time." I swallowed. Rejection was familiar. It lived with me, but something inside refused to step back this time. "Just one sentence," I said. "If I fail, I'll leave." She studied my face for a long second, then gestured toward the room. "One sentence. That's it." Inside, the air felt heavy. Men and women sat around a long table, stress written across every face. Papers covered the surface. Screens displayed foreign text. When they noticed me, conversations stopped. "This is the cleaner," the woman announced flatly. "He says he can interpret." A few people chuckled. One man rubbed his temples like this was the last thing he needed. "Fine," someone said. "French. Let's end this." They slid a document toward me. I didn't rush. I read, and then I spoke. Fluent, clear, natural. The room went quiet. Someone leaned forward. "Spanish." I translated again. "German." Done. "Arabic." Still calm. "Mandarin." My voice didn't shake. With each language, the laughter disappeared. Smiles faded. Disbelief replaced amusement. After the 8th language, no one spoke. Finally, a man at the head of the table whispered, "Where did you learn all this?" I hesitated. The truth was long, painful, but honest. "Life," I said. They asked me to wait outside. As I stood in the hallway, memories flooded back. Memories that explained everything. I hadn't always been a cleaner. I grew up in a small, crowded apartment where silence was rare and money even rarer. My father worked odd jobs, my mother took care of neighbors' children. Education wasn't a luxury we could afford, but curiosity was free. Languages fascinated me from the start. Different sounds, different ways to say the same feeling. At school, teachers noticed I learned faster than most. But talent without opportunity doesn't go far. When my mother fell sick, school ended for me. Survival began. I worked in markets, ports, hotels, anywhere people spoke differently. I listened more than I talked. I asked questions. I remembered patterns. Later, I met my wife while working abroad. She spoke 3 languages herself. We practiced together, corrected each other, laughed at mistakes. Then she was gone, and everything collapsed. When you lose someone like that, your mind looks for places to hide. For me, it was language. Studying kept the grief from swallowing me whole. Every night, after my children slept, I opened old books, watched videos, repeated phrases until my tongue obeyed. Some nights, tears blurred the words. Other nights, hope kept me awake. No one ever applauded. No certificates. No recognition. Just progress. The door opened. "Come in," the woman said, her tone completely different now. Inside, the mood had changed. Chairs were straightened. Faces were serious. "We need you," the man at the head of the table said. "But we have questions." I nodded. I was used to questions. "Why are you cleaning floors when you can do this?" I smiled faintly. "Because floors don't ask about your past." Silence followed. They explained the deal. A massive international negotiation happening in days. Millions were at stake. They needed someone who didn't just translate words, but understood tone, culture, intent. "You'll be tested again," the woman said. "By the CEO himself." I felt a chill. The CEO. As I returned to my cleaning cart, whispers followed me. People who never noticed me before suddenly looked twice. That night, I told my children I might be late the next day. "Are you getting a promotion?" my son asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. My daughter smiled. "You always surprise people, Daddy." The next morning, I stood in front of the largest office in the building. Behind that door was a man who could change my life, or end the dream before it began. I straightened my jacket, took a breath, and stepped inside.